On This Week in Enterprise Tech, Steve Gibson and Mark Smith drop by to tell us all about Black Hat DEFCON. That's right, it's Hacker Summer Camp. Twyat on the set.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Enterprise Tech is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twyat. This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 152, recorded July 31st, 2015 for August 7th, 2015. Hacker Summer Camp. This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Igloo Software. Igloo is an internet you'll actually like. Use blogs, calendars, file sharing, forums, task management, and wikis to work better together with your teams. Sign up now and try it for free at igloosoftware.com/twit. And by Braintree. If you're working on a mobile app and searching for the right payments API, check out the Braintree V.0 SDK. With one simple integration, you get every way to pay. To learn more and to try out the sandbox, go to braintreepayments.com/enterprise. Welcome to Twyat This Week in Enterprise Tech. It's the show dedicated to the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and the geek who just wants to know how the world is connected. I'm your host, Father Robert Ballasare, the digital Jesuit, your guide to all things in the enterprise. And I'm joined by my, well, good friend over on the East Coast, Mr. Curtis Franklin from Information Week Radio. Curtis, so good to see you.
Padre, always a pleasure to be here on Twyat.
And you're not in your regular studio. Are you in an undisclosed bunker?
Padre, this is indeed an undisclosed location. We're not in the Swamp Studio tonight, but hopefully the network will stay with us and no one will know the difference.
Now, I should say that we are pre-recording this because we're going to be at Black Hat DEFCON or Hacker Summer Camp, whatever you want to call this coming week. And I should also note that because Windows 10 was just released, we are seeing some interesting traffic on the interwebs that tends to be detrimental to Skype. So if we get a drop-off or two, you know why it happened. But let's not talk about detriment because of Win 10. Let's, in fact, just focus on the enterprise blips. This first one is all about DNS being in a bind. Actually, specifically, in a bind 9. It was revealed last week that the most popular DNS server software has a critical vulnerability that allows a single malformed packet to crash both the authoritative and recursive DNS server. The bug attacks the T-key feature that allows for the generation of a shared secret key between two hosts. The attack exploits T-key's handling of records, resulting in a denial of service. Adding to the bad news is the fact that the exploit is possible not just because of a bug in bind versions 9 to 9.10.2-P2, but because bind simply has too many features that don't get used, and those features are often exploitable. A patch is already available, which is good because attack code is already in the wild.
Open containers get closer to an open spec. The Open Container Initiative, OCI, is gathering a multi-vendor consensus on how containers will be implemented, while at the same time gathering new members into its alliance. Now containing a veritable who's who of container vendors and large-scale users, the OCI is producing a shared method of formatting a container known as the App Container, or AppC specification, which was originally contributed by Core OS. OCI is also working to finalize its proposed container runtime, the defined Run C environment, which sets the conditions in which a container may run. Docker contributed its own runtime, Run C, as the shared standard. The OCI is off to a fast start as a multi-vendor joint technical organization that will share the basic elements of container technology. These same vendors remember that the last time they quarreled over a new technology, VMware ran off with the leading virtual machine intellectual property and the Enterprise Product Initiative. This time, if the standard can be adopted broadly and quickly, both vendors and users are set to benefit.
Maybe this is a surprise and maybe it's a not, but guess what? The world's best hackers are from Russia. A security research firm took a behind the digital Iron Curtain look at the Russian underground hacking scene and found it, well, fascinating. Though many high-profile hacks have been blamed on Chinese state-sponsored hacking groups, Trend Micro claims that nobody matches the Russians in terms of sheer organization, sophistication, automation, and professionalism. Among the highlights of their report, a division of labor that protects all ranks of large operations, mobilization capabilities that rival most state organizations, a fully developed underground economy for the trading of secrets, resources, and talent, and one-stop shops for language translation, fake IDs, scripting, log processing, and money laundering. In other words, in Soviet Russia, the system hacks you.
Google Streetview cars are out getting some air. Working in conjunction with Igloo, a company that creates and operates environmental sensor networks, 3 Google Streetview vehicles spent a month last summer driving around Denver, Colorado, taking in the air. The cars measured pollutants that affect health and the climate, including nitrogen dioxide, nitric oxide, ozone, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, methane, black carbon, particulate matter, and volatile organic compounds. This isn't the first time the two companies have worked together. For the past few years, Igloo has been working with Google to deploy a network of environmental sensors across 21 Google offices in 4 countries. The network consists of 500 Igloo sensors that evaluate 500 million data points daily, including measurements of temperature, humidity, vibration, noise, light, and particulate matter in the air. All of this just goes to show that a massive array of sensors is going to find some novel uses, even if those uses are far from what the designers originally intended.
We all know that servers plus SSDs equals pure awesome. That is, unless, of course, your servers are running Linux and your SSDs are from Samsung. For a while now, admins have been finding extraordinarily high failure rates on Samsung SSDs in their Linux servers. From cascading failures to outright SSD death that killed clusters, many in the Linux community have been demanding that Samsung fix their firmware before some data catastrophe occurs. Well, as it turns out, it wasn't Samsung's problem. It was a problem in the Linux kernel. If a system was using MD RAID 0 or 10, then trim or discard commands could cause corrupt data to be pushed to the SSDs. The bug has been around for quite some time, so it's interesting to note that it's only recently getting airtime. Samsung has submitted a patch to fix the bug, so admins with SSD server farms need to get out there and get patching. When we come back, we're bringing in 2 of my favorite people. We've got Steve Gibson from grc.com and Mark Smitty Halibut Smith. I know it's a long name, but it's a DEF CON thing. We're going to be breaking out the news for this Hacker Summer Camp week because we've got DEF CON and Black Hat happening at the same time in Las Vegas. In fact, that's where we are right now. And we want to bring you some of the front row news that's been, well, making the news. Now, before we do that, let's go ahead and take a moment to thank the first sponsor of this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Let me ask you something. Do you remember when the corporate intranet was the new thing? Remember, it was supposed to be your own personal internet, the thing that would allow your workers to access all the data and all the tools and all the different pieces of resources that they needed to do their jobs? Yeah, it was the cutting edge of enterprise corporate technology, communications technology, in an extraordinarily boring way. Well, that was great 10, 15 years ago, but today corporate internets don't look so great. They're outdated, their interfaces are tough to navigate, and let's just face it, they're ugly, which is why we're happy to have Igloo as a sponsor of the Twilight Riot. Now, Igloo is an internet that you'd actually want to use. It's a cloud portal that enables you to share files, collaborate on documents, blog updates, coordinate calendars, and manage products and projects from all of the same attractive and intuitive interfaces that you see on, well, social media. Igloo leverages the best part of the intranet and the best part of the internet. It gives you important enterprise-specific data at your fingertips and what people have come to expect from social. For example, user comments, like buttons, and the ability to add content based on permissions with drag-and-drop widgets and a WYSIWYG editor. Of course, a beautiful and intuitive interface isn't very useful if your users can't access it on the devices that they're using. That's why Igloo is built with responsive design that automatically reformats to your phone or your tablet. Now, Igloo is also customizable, which is huge if you care about branding, and you should care about branding because it's your public-facing face. Whether you're a large enterprise using SharePoint or a fast-growing business with a hodgepodge of tools and platforms, you can now use Igloo to create an internet that matches your brand's look and feel, simplifies how you work, and is accessible on any device. Of course, you got to ask about security. Well, how about this? How about SSL and 256-bit encryption baked into a variety of access, authentication, and identity modules to ensure that only authorized users have access to your intranet? Igloo offers plans starting at just $3 per month per user. And unlike other solutions, you get full access to Igloo's entire suite of tools all for one low price. There's no fee piracy going on here where they try to bring you in and then slam you with every single upgrade they can think of. Volume pricing is also available, and it's used by government agencies and companies like Hulu, Inventive Health, American Family Insurance, and IP Switch. If they trust Igloo, shouldn't you too? Here's what we want you to do. We want you to sign up now and try it for free at igloosoftware.com/twit. That's igloosoftware.com/twit. And when you sign up through our link, you can get your own Igloo for up to 10 people absolutely free for as long as you want. That's right, folks. Do it now. Do it today, and you'll get your own group that you get to keep for free. That's igloosoftware.com/twit. igloosoftware.com/twit. And we thank Igloo for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. We welcome to the show two people who, if you've been watching my shows, probably really need no introduction. First, starting with Steve Gibson from grc.com. He is the security guru, I'd say the patron saint of security for Twit TV. Steve, thank you for coming back on to Twit.
Hey, Padre, great to be with you again on a Friday afternoon.
A Friday afternoon, and we got so much fun stuff to talk about, which is why I welcomed the next person on the panel, who, by the way, told me once that he really wanted to work with you. So this is sort of a Make-A-Wish Foundation type episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Mark Smith, we call him Smitty Halibut. He is a friend of mine from DEF CON. Thank you very much for coming on to Twit.
Thanks for having me. And actually, I wanted to compliment Steve. When you have a real honest-to-goodness priest calling you a patron saint, I think that carries a little more weight than the average comment.
I don't know. I all sorts of things come out of this mouth, and it's weird. But the reason why we have the two of you on is because this is the week. This is the week that so many of us wait for, we anticipate, we love. Black Hat, DEF CON. And then all the little events that happen along with them are occurring right now in Las Vegas. In fact, that's why we're pre-recording this. I'm sorry, folks, this is not a live episode. This is a pre-recorded episode because at least a few of us are going to be down baking in Las Vegas, soaking in the latest and the greatest in software vulnerabilities and hardware advancements. We're going to talk about those in just a bit, but Smitty, I met you at DEF CON, and I would say between the four of us, you have undoubtedly the most experience at DEF CON. And DEF CON is kind of the premier event at the hardware hackers or the hacker summer camp.
Yeah.
How would you want to describe DEF CON to someone who has only heard about it through mainstream news as the place where the hackers go?
Oh, great gravy. You had to start off with the hard question, didn't you? So DEF CON started out as a way for a bunch of hackers to get together in the desert at a cheap time to get some hotels and hang out and exchange news and skills and tricks and whatnot. Since then, it kind of got much bigger than kind of it ever was, you know, in the beginning, and bigger than they ever thought it was going to be, and it kind of got more commercialized. And a lot of the old school hackers think that that is a bad thing. I'm not entirely sure that it is. To me, I don't think of it as getting commercialized. I think of it more as growing up. A lot of us that were young back in the 90s when it started are a little bit older, a little bit more mature. You know, we have kids now. We have jobs. We have, you know, real honest-to-goodness responsibilities. And, you know, and DEF CON kind of represents that now. And so there's less pouring concrete in the toilets, less throwing lit flares into elevators, and more running contests and events and going out and having, you know, sane, organized, but still fun events. And there's still a lot going on at DEF CON. It's not the same crazy, stupid, illegal, immoral stuff that we used to do, but I still think it's a lot of fun and very much still worth going to.
I remember one year I attended, and I went up to a suite. There was a hacking team that was in a suite. It was a fun time. And then we tried to take the elevator down, and we had found out that someone had hacked the computer, the controller on the elevator, and it would just drop you off on a random floor. It didn't matter what button you pushed.
That's kind of an awesome hack.
That's an awesome hack. It was incredibly annoying, I gotta say. But
yeah,
that's
depending on how tall the towers are, you just take the elevator or take the stairs, and you know, consider it a good thing.
Right. Steve, You don't go to DEF CON Black Hat. Have you ever gone to DEF CON Black Hat?
Never been to one. Nope.
No desire.
No, I used to go to Comdex back in the day at the beginning of the PC era, and when the internet began to happen, it just became easier to stay home and watch it all happen from afar. Though I do recognize there's no comparison to being there. And I have to say, having read through the program planned for Black Hat, especially, my mouth was watering. I was thinking, oh, that would be really fun to sit there. The problem is you have to choose what you want to see, and there's a lot of collision among really tasty stuff. So you really need more than one of you in order to be able to see everything in the same way that, my TiVo can record 6 channels. And so, I'll wait till afterwards and then read all of the papers that seem interesting. And, of course, watch the reporting that you bring back.
Smitty, I know you're going to want to respond to that, why people might actually want to show up in person.
Chomping at the bit.
I'll get back to you in a bit, but I want to bring in Curtis here in a bit, because Curtis actually was with me and Brian Chi last year at Black Hat. You were broadcasting from Black Hat. What was that experience like? I mean, you got more of an overview of what was happening. And like Steve says, one of the biggest problems of a conference like this is you're never going to be able to see everything you want. You've always got popular talks that are stacked up on top of each other. And unlike, for example, at DEF CON, because the lines get so long, you can do maybe 2 talks a day and get really bad seats for them. But what was your experience of covering the conference?
Well, my experience covering Black Hat last year was utterly bizarre because I spent the entire time in one room. I had set up my studio, and basically people came to me. I did about 20 interviews during Black Hat, so I didn't get to see a single presentation, didn't get to hear a single thing that went on, but I figured out what was happening because either before or after many of the top speakers gave their presentations, they came in and talked to me. So my experience of Black Hat is that it's a very echoey large box into which interesting people come to tell you what's going on in the wide world of security.
Okay, Mark, I'm going to give you your chance here. There's a nooblet. There's someone who's just saying, oh, this sounds interesting, but maybe Steve's right. Maybe it's like CES where so much coverage is done and it's so well created, and they're going to cover so many different angles that I can just sit at home and experience everything that Black Hat DEF CON has to offer. And to that person, you would say emphatically,
no. So what is covered and what you can see after the fact is the talks. And I think the biggest misconception at this point is that the talks are why you go to DEF CON. I have not gone to DEF CON with the intention of going to any talks for, I think, about 10 years now. I originally got started in the hardware hacking village when it was new. I've been doing badge hacking. I've been doing the mystery challenge. I brought a couple of events to DEF CON. I started Crash and Compile 5 years ago, which is a programming contest drinking game. What could possibly go wrong? And then I started the DEF CON Darknet about 3 years ago, and we're back for our 3rd year this year on that one. And so between all of the different villages, between all of the different contests, between all of the different parties and the hangout room and like the EFF summit and walking around the vendor area and just meeting people and being there, that is what I get out of DEF CON, not the talks. If there is a particular talk I want to go to, occasionally I'll try and get in. Most of the time I can't because of the lines like you were talking about, but I'm never worried about it because I know in a month or two they're all going to be on YouTube, or you can download them from some other provider. I don't know where. And you can get them. You can get them for free. And in worst case, you can go into your hotel room and they stream them on the TV in the hotel. So being there in the talks is not why I go to DEF CON. In fact, there are even some talks where you explicitly do not want to be there. I remember one, I think it was 2 years ago, where they were demonstrating cellular phone takeovers. Like they brought in cell tower, and they were performing man in the middle on cell phones, and there was a big warning sign on the door that said, you know, warning, if you bring in your phone and it's an AT&T phone, it will get hacked during this talk. And so you see everybody sitting there turning off their phones as they're walking in there. I was in line for that one. I wanted to get in, and they literally closed the door one person in front of me. There was one person in front of me before they had to close because the fire marshal wouldn't let anyone else in. In hindsight, I'm kind of glad I didn't get into that talk, but yeah, I honestly, the talks are not why I go to DEF CON.
Right. And actually, I should know, Alex, if you could show my computer, there is one thing that you will participate in at Black Hat if you decide to turn on your devices, and that's the Wall of Sheep. This is one of my favorite artifacts from DEF CON. This goes way, way back, where if you are naive enough to use the DEF CON network and not use some sort of secure way of transmitting your credentials, you end up on this wall. And they didn't used to be this nice. So they kind of block out part of your password so that people can't just immediately log into your account. They didn't used to do that. It used to be, it was just everything was clear text. And this is kind of the culture of Black Hat and DEF CON. And Steve,
I don't think this is at Black Hat. I think
this is DEF CON. But I mean, but that's why these two things are together. We've got people in the chat room, Jordan217, who very rightfully asks, what does this have to do with the enterprise? And Steve, I want to throw over to you. The same people who were going to DEF CON 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they're enterprise security professionals today. They're the ones who go to Black Hat. They start the week at Black Hat. They get their learning in. And then, like Smitty says, they go to DEF CON and they reconnect with their community.
Well, a perfect example is one of the presentations is called SMB V2, Sharing More Than Just Your Files. And the description of the presentation says, in this presentation, we will detail a new attack vector against SMB2, and that's server message blocks, the standard Windows file and printer sharing protocol. And they say, affecting all versions of IE, including the Spartan version shipping with Windows 10. While attacks involving SMB have long been common in LANs, our attack allows complete user compromise from the internet. By leveraging a series of bugs and malfunctions, we'll see how remote credential theft or user impersonation can be performed without any user interaction, extremely reliably and over the internet. So that's something that any enterprise with IE inside of it has an acute interest in understanding.
Absolutely. And see, that's the funny thing. The people I know who poo-poo DEF CON, and there's not many of them, but they do definitely exist, and normally they tend to be executives. They say, well, what do I care? Because the news I saw was some guy made an RF extender for Wi-Fi that allows you to proxy your connection so they can't find you. That I have no interest in knowing about that whatsoever. But you also get these directly relatable enterprise topics that are nestled in within the big ticket, the big budget items. Curtis, how do you sort through those? I mean, you had to do that last year when you chose what made it onto your show.
Well, I think that you look at it in a couple of terms. There are, if you will, a couple of axes that you can make the judgment on. One axis is the technological sophistication. In other words, how important is what's going on in terms of just the sheer technology. The other is on the impact. How many companies or individuals are likely to be affected by this? For example, there was one we saw last year that I talked to the folks about that was about hacking into satellite system earth stations. The technology was really cool. The number of people who were going to be impacted by that, pretty small. But you've got to sort of make your decision based on those and decide which of those is more important to you. If you are someone who is high up in an enterprise security apparatus, you're probably going to want to see those things that you think are going to affect the most people or the most companies. On the other hand, there are a lot of times when you go in and you say, I don't care, that's just the coolest thing I've heard about in a while, even if it could mean the end of humanity and civilization as we know it.
That's pretty much
doggone
DEFCON every year.
So I want to respond to that one as well. You hit the nail on the head with there are some things that are just cool, and it's not a matter of, oh, that's a really neat hack, but it's a matter of going there to understand the mentality, get into the headspace of the people who are doing these things. I get a lot of people asking me, how do I get into information security? My brother-in-law just asked me this. He's trying to get into InfoSec, and the best advice I can give to people is to figure out how the attackers, the bad guys, I hate calling them hackers because, I'm a hacker, but I'm not a bad guy. I'm not the black hat, white hat thing is overblown. Anyway, how do they think? And it's a matter of looking at a system and trying to figure out, all right, it's intended to do this, but how can I tweak it and use it to do this instead? And it's that mentality that makes you a good InfoSec person. It makes you go into a situation and say, great, we're going to buy this software package. We're going to install it, and it's going to do this thing. We're buying it for this thing. However, if you've got the hacker mentality, you're looking at it and you're kind of noticing this little feature over here that if I were to do this with it, turn it this way, then it could be used to do this entirely other thing that a nefarious person might do to my network. And it's that kind of mentality. It's not because you want to be able to do those nefarious things. It's because you need to be able to predict what could be done so that you can set up your systems to prevent it. That is why I go to DEF CON. Not because I want to learn the newest hack or be able to figure out how to do it, but because I want to be able to think like them so that when I go to my office, which is using completely different software and completely different systems than what they present at DEF CON, I'm not running a satellite base station at my house or at my enterprise, right? So, but listening to that talk about those people who are hacking into those satellite base stations gives me an idea of how they do what it is that they do. And that makes me a better person to be able to figure out how they could do something like that to my specific situation, which is different than theirs, but is still very important. And there's not going to be anyone at DEF CON talking about my very specific system. So I need to be the one who does that. And the way I do that is by getting into that mindset. And that is really the biggest thing that I get out of DEF CON.
And that's why I love the fact that DEF CON and Black Hat, they're almost a unit. I mean, if you go to Black Hat, you're going to DEF CON. If you go to DEF CON, maybe you didn't go to Black Hat. But I love to hear about these exploits, especially the theoretical exploits at which the attack code has not yet been published. And then I go to DEF CON and I find someone who's actually using the attack code. And like you said, it puts me into a different mindset. It's like, well, I just heard about this exploit. You're actually showing me a way to use it that even the speaker didn't think you would do. That's completely invaluable. I mean, that's more than playground. That's like sandbox, right? Steve Gibson.
No, I agree. And I have to say, Mark makes, I think, a lot of really good points. It's the when I was in the going to Comdex every year mode, it was about being like, dipping yourself into the culture and into the experience. And you got a lot of things out of it that you didn't expect.
Curtis, I want to throw a question to you that Jordan217 and a few others, like Chumley in the chat room, have been asking. And that is, again, you deal with the enterprise side a lot. You deal with CTOs and CIOs, people who do hiring decisions. Do they see the value in a Black Hat DEF CON Hacker Summer Camp week? I think the question was asked, is that something that I would put on a job application, that I've been going to these conferences for a while, or is that not even part of the calculus?
I don't know that simply attending would go on a resume, although it's certainly something to bring up in an interview. Now, if you do something like go to DEF CON and you are on the team that wins Capture the Flag, that goes on a resume.
Yes, it does.
And you get a badge. You get an awesome, awesome badge, by the way.
Yes, I have good friends who have been on the winning team multiple times. And as a matter of fact, one of them was on the news this last week because he walked away with 1 million United frequent flyer miles for showing them a deficiency in one of their systems. But I think if you are talking to security professionals, there is among them really the expectation that if you're serious, you are going to find one or more of these conferences to attend. And if you are in the enterprise space, there are really two in North America. You're going to go to Black Hat, you're going to go to RSA, or both. And it's important to let it be known that you are keeping current and that you do, as Smitty was saying, get in touch with the mindset of the people who are going to be challenging you on a professional basis. It's important. I really hate to use the phrase know your enemy, but certainly know the mindset of the people you're going to be dealing with in all shades of black, white, and gray through the security field.
When we come back, we're going to turn Steve Gibson loose. I asked him to take a look through the PR blasts that have been being sent out for the last 3 weeks and find the ones that he was most drooling over. So we're gonna take a look at some high impact exploits that we will be seeing demonstrated at both Black Hat DEFCON. If you wanted the more enterprise hardcore security angle, folks, we're getting to it. But before we do that, let's go ahead and thank the second sponsor of this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech. And well, I got a little something for you folks out there who might be developers. If you are developing, specifically developing a mobile app, at some point you're going to need to find a way to monetize it. And that usually means adding some sort of financial transaction capabilities to your application. Now, you could do it the old way. The old way would be to, well, set up a back-end server and make sure that the server was secure and make sure that your software was always patched, and then make some sort of agreement with a payments processing center so that you could take credit cards and popular payment methods. Yeah, you could do all that and then worry about accidentally exposing customers' personal identifiable information and maybe leaking out credit card numbers like we've seen happen to large organizations. Or you could just trust another group to do it for you, to do it well, to do it securely, and to do it with a minimum amount of fuss. That's why we're happy to have and proud to have Braintree as a sponsor of the Twite Riot. Now, what is Braintree? Braintree is one of the easiest ways to add financial transactions to your application. It's just 10 lines of in-app code. Now, Braintree gives you a way to accept all the popular payment solutions. Do you want to take Apple Pay, PayPal, Bitcoin, Venmo, major credit cards? That's right. You could do it all with that same 10 lines of code. Now, they've got a V.0 SDK that works in 7 different languages: .NET, Node.js, Java, Perl, PHP, Python, and Ruby. And their code supports Android, iOS, and JavaScript clients. With that single snippet of code, you will be able to accept all the payment types your customers want. And because they tokenize all of the information, it means you're never really exposing any information. You're not responsible for any of your customers' personally identifiable information. Braintree takes care of everything, and you can just focus on making a better app. Now, beyond that, Braintree also gives you the best in-class customer service. If you have a question or a problem with Braintree, you always get a live person to talk to. And if you're struggling with the integration, they'll have a representative sit with you and just push you through the integration process step by step. They want you to get up and running. They want you to try Braintree because they know that once you try it, you're not going to want to go with anybody else. Of course, Braintree knows that it's not enough to have easy-to-integrate code and top-notch customer service. They get that they're offering you financial services and that their security is actually your security because it's what people associate with you. So, again, they're going to tokenize all the payment data. They're going to make sure that real credit card information is never passed on, and they safeguard your customers' financial information so that you don't have to. You can't lose. So what do you have to wait for? Use Braintree, the fastest, easiest, most secure way to pay ever. They give you an easy way to accept those multiple payment types, and you need to try it today. With that Braintree V.0 SDK, one small snippet of code, and you're up and running in less than 10 minutes. To learn more about Braintree and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to BraintreePayments.com/enterprise. That's BraintreePayments.com/enterprise. And we thank Braintree for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Steve Gibson, we've got a lot of people drooling for this.
So, well, okay. So one of the things that happens every year with Black Hat and DEFCON is that the announcements that are going to be made that are on the sort of on the earth-shattering side tend to either deliberately or inadvertently leak out before the conference. So already 2 huge impact vulnerabilities that are the source of presentations and papers that will be revealed in full at DEF CON have been making the news. First is that this major Chrysler vehicle hack problem that affected nearly 1.5 million Chrysler vehicles. Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek hacked over the internet, famously, I think it was Charlie's Jeep, because Chris tweeted a few days ago that Sprint, the carrier of the cell service for these cars, had blocked the port to prevent this from happening. And of course, it's no coincidence that this news came out before the actual big reveal of the details, but that's what these guys are going to be talking about during their formal presentation. So that's an example of the serious sort of new information which comes out during these conferences. And then the second of these 2 that have made headlines was even more recently, and that was the big news of this MMS, the multimedia message hack, which allows a takeover of nearly 1 billion Android devices, about 950 million, it's estimated, Android phones can have a remote code execution vulnerability exploited merely by having the phone receive a specially crafted MMS message. This is one that I'm really interested in seeing because the problem that Android owners are well aware of is that carriers tend to be very lazy about pushing to older phones. And after about 18 months, you may or may not get the patch. What these guys have said, Joshua Drake is giving the presentation named Stage Fright, Scary Code in the Heart of Android, and has stated that he'll be releasing proof of concept code after the presentation. So what I'm hoping we're going to get is some proof of concept code which will allow somebody to produce a benign test for whether a given Android phone is vulnerable. The scary thing about this is all you need is a phone number. The phone receives the MMS message given the phone number of the device, and without any user interaction at all, the bad guys are able to execute executable code on the phone and even remove almost all traces of it. They're able to delete the MMS message, leaving just a notification that some message arrived, but you can't even, the message itself can be deleted. So full details will be released during the presentation, proof of concept code afterwards, and then we'll see how the cookies crumbles. And then
Steve,
one other thing.
One of the interesting aspects of those 2 hacks, and I think, yeah, those 2 are the biggest ones. So Stage Fright is still big because we don't exactly know how easy it is to craft that MMS message. Right. We have seen a couple of proof of concepts. I do want to actually sit down in the presentation and see how it works. But that one has a lot of legs because we all know that there are millions, if not hundreds of millions of phones, Android phones, that will never get patched, ever.
Right.
Not in a million years. It's just not in the cards. But I'm actually, even more than that, what worries me is this trend that we're seeing of these networked things like cars, which are being put on networks that were never really designed to handle them. The cars aren't supposed to be on the internet. SCADA devices aren't supposed to be on the internet. And for the last 3 or 4 years, a lot of the news at Black Hat and DEF CON have focused on these devices that are part of the enterprise Internet of Things.
Well, and Padre, Windows was never supposed to be on the internet.
Right.
Unix was designed as a networked OS from the start. Windows wasn't. And so what happened was the internet came along while Bill was off making MSN because he was going to compete with CompuServe for dial-up, and the internet happened, and he said, "Oh, okay, let's hook this up to, put this on the internet somehow." And of course, the security catastrophe of Windows were things like file and printer sharing, where your C drive was being published over the global internet, and no one had any idea that that was happening. So yes, exactly as you said, the idea of taking devices which were not designed from scratch to be networked and just saying, give them an interface and an IP address and good luck.
Curtis, let me draw you into the conversation here. I've heard some interesting, well, by heard, I mean, I've gotten some panicked emails from organizations that I work with to help secure devices and secure networks. And a few of them have flat out asked me, should I ban my employees from using an Android phone on our network? And I don't want to overreact. So my measured response is always, look, I don't know yet. We don't have all the details. I'm not going to panic until I know exactly how the exploit works. But I can almost say that's not actually a bad idea. Because, I mean, and we all know this. When I'm dealing with an Apple device, even though I don't particularly like how they work, I don't particularly like the interface, at least I know that they're going to get updated. If I'm allowing Android devices on my network, and so many different types of Android devices on my network, it seems like an unnecessary hassle for me as an IT admin. Have you heard any scuttlebutt on the enterprise side?
Oh, good heavens, yes. I know lots and lots of CIOs, network admins, IT managers of various sorts who either ban Android devices or in a BYOD policy severely limit the number of Android options that they allow employees to bring onto the corporate network. There are people who will say, okay, if you want Android, here are the devices you can use. These models from these vendors. And the reason is just what you say. When you talk about iOS and an iDevice, at most, realistically, you're talking about probably 3 versions of the software that are likely to be out there. And that includes those people who are still using iPhone 4s from 6 years ago. But at last count, there were something like 17 billion different versions of Android in the wild. And each one is slightly different. Each one has its own set of exploits, and none of them work precisely like any of the other 16 plus billion. So from that perspective, it is really a nightmare scenario. I mean, imagine if you had an enterprise where people were bringing in Linux laptops, only everyone developed their own distribution.
I think that's I'm pretty sure that's actually how it works.
That is Linux. Yeah.
That is Linux. I've never had 2 Linux laptops that were the same.
Yeah, it says the Linux user here. I'm a Linux user, so I can say that safely.
Which is precisely why the same CIOs who love Android so much passionately embrace Linux on the desktop in BYOD policies. No, it's all about balancing control and freedom. And Android is simply way too far over on the anarchic side of the scale for the comfort of people in the enterprise. And I hear this especially in places where the culture means that Android devices are allowed. Talk to folks at universities, for example. And it's a security nightmare. There are reasons why universities are historical hotbeds of the propagation of viruses, malware, and pornography files. Because in many cases, they are quite literally the Wild West in ivy-covered halls.
All right, I have to throw over to Spitty because I can see him in my preview screen, and he is grinning and smirking. Go ahead, Smitty.
About the Android thing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no. Okay, so I retweeted a tweet I read the other day. Someone was saying, it's like, yeah, this thing affects like 95% of all of the Android devices out there. To which somebody responds, wow, I'm impressed they were able to get anything to run on 95% of all Android devices.
Oh, wow.
Zing!
Wow. Okay, I deserve that. Okay, but okay, so there's an obvious, for the enterprise, there is an obvious solution to all of this, and it's not to use Android, but instead to use Windows Phone. Yes?
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Well, until the hackers start working on that.
They're not going to. It's such a small market share. Why would they do that?
Well, so I'm not a Windows user. I would love to see Windows Phone succeed, if for no other reason than to have a third player in the market, but also because I think Windows is going in the right direction. This is probably a discussion for a different episode, but Ubuntu Phone and Windows Phone are the two that I want to see. I want. There is no reason that this can't be my desktop. All I need is a drop-in thing with a charger and an external monitor and an external keyboard. This device, my iPhone 6 Plus, is about as powerful as my desktop was 5 years ago, and it works just fine, right? Why can't I have all of my data on a single device and just change the physical platform? I want that to happen. So I think Microsoft's idea of unifying a touch interface and a desktop interface into a single operating system is one way to get there. Ubuntu is keeping two different UIs, but trying to unify them into a single device and make it so that the application developers have to implement two UIs for a given application. I'm not sure which of those two options is likely to succeed, but for the love of God and all that is holy, I want to get away from having to sync data across multiple devices. It's stupid. It never works. Please give me one device that I can do all my stuff on.
I want to throw back over to Steve here in a bit because we got to get back on the Gibson train. But before we do that, I do want to mention that I have a call out, and I'm going to see if I can get one of the new Windows Phone flagships. And if I can, I'm going to try to switch away from iOS and Android for an entire year, see how that works in the enterprise, because actually I'm kind of excited by what they can do with Windows 10, security issues notwithstanding. But Steve Gibson, we rudely interrupted you in the middle of your security role. So we've got hacking of cars, and there's been a couple of different variations. There's the original one where the security researchers were able to use Uconnect to get into the controller area network. We've got the one done by the NCC group, which I'm pretty sure is named after the Enterprise from Star Trek. Like 99% that's where they got it from. But
okay, well,
sorry?
Check out this description. This is another presentation which will be made, and it's written to be a little hyperbolic, but everyone can use their imagination. This is by Christopher Domas, who is giving the presentation, The Memory Sinkhole, Unleashing an x86 Design Flaw, Allowing Universal Privilege Escalation. And he describes his presentation as, in x86, beyond ring 0 lie the more privileged realms of execution, where our code is invisible to antivirus. We have unfettered access to hardware and can trivially preempt and modify the operating system. The architecture has heaped layers upon layers of protections on these negative rings. But 40 years of x86 evolution have left a labyrinth of forgotten backdoors into the ultra-privileged modes. Lost in this Byzantine maze of decades-old architecture, improvements, and patches, there lies a design flaw that's gone unnoticed for 20 years. In one of the most bizarre and complex vulnerabilities we have ever seen, we'll release proof of concept code exploiting the vast, unexplored wasteland of forgotten x86 features to demonstrate how to jump malicious code from the paltry ring 0 into the deepest, darkest realms of the processor. Best of all, we'll do it with an architectural ZeroDay built into the silicon itself directed against a uniquely vulnerable string of code running on every single system.
Wait. ZeroDay built into the silicon itself. Is this assembly? Is this machine code?
This is down at the metal, and this is a presentation to be given next week.
There's nobody better to explain this one to us than Mr. Assembly himself.
That's
I'm
right.
looking forward to that security now.
I was listening to you read that going, oh, wait, hold on. I've heard about this before. Steve talks about this all the time. Wait,
we talk about the positive rings, and this guy says, the rings go negative.
Now, I'm starting to hear this more and more. In fact, we covered a story like this for Bind, this idea of forgotten / abandoned features that no one ever uses, no one ever updates. They're just there, and now people are realizing it's a treasure trove of exploits.
Well, same thing with OpenSSL.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kind of guessing what this might be. I'm doing there's a hack I'm using in the next SpinRite, in SpinRite 6.1, which allows me to access all of the RAM within DOS. And DOS, famously, you're limited to 64K segments. But there's something known as selector caching, which still exists in all of the hardware, and it represents a ripe opportunity for exploitation. And I just wonder maybe if these guys have figured out how to take advantage of that long-forgotten fact of the Intel architecture. We'll find out.
So how long do you think they've been copying and pasting the VHDL from the original 8086 into the modern-day CPUs? Just grab the whole thing, just drag it over, and we'll add some more stuff.
And they dare not change it, or they're going to break something. Something will break.
So, solution to this one, Raspberry Pis for everyone.
No, you're not taking away my laptop. All right, so we go from x86. This next one that you picked out, Steve, weird. It's a weird angle, but it is an Internet of Thing.
It is, and it also, I saw some news. People have been scouring what Black Hat will be announcing for some time, and so I saw this either Twitter or the news, and I thought, what? Okay, so this one is titled "When IoT Attacks Hacking a Linux-Powered Rifle," and it's like, what? First of all, a Linux-powered rifle. So their description says, Tracking Point is an Austin startup known for making precision-guided firearms. These firearms ship with a tightly integrated system coupling a rifle, an ARM-powered scope, running a modified version of Linux, and a linked trigger mechanism, which is freaky. I mean, you just don't want your ARM-powered scope and software to be involved with the trigger mechanism. They say the scope can follow targets, calculate ballistics, and drastically increase its users' first shot accuracy.
Have these people never read Kill Decision?
Exactly. The scope can also record video and audio. Oh, this is really making me a little queasy. As well as stream video to other devices using its own wireless network and mobile applications. In this talk, we will demonstrate how the Tracking Point long-range tactical rifle works. We will discuss how we reverse engineered the scope, the firmware, and 3 of Tracking Point's mobile applications. We will discuss different use cases and attack surfaces. And in this case, this brings new meaning to the term attack surface. They say we will also discuss the security and privacy implications of network-connected firearms.
You know, Steve, if you have to log into your rifle before you shoot something, you're doing it wrong. This is horrible.
It is truly terrifying. You know, we've seen that the guys that were hacking the Jeep were able to take over steering because, of course, you want that parallel parking feature where you just press a button and the steering wheel spins and parks your car. But if you can do that, that means you've given software control of steering. And these guys demonstrated that they're able to take over steering over the internet. I hesitate to think what happens if you've given software control of the trigger mechanism and streaming video, what they're able to do with an unattended rifle.
Yeah, I've seen actually the tracking point in action, and so what it does is when you pull the trigger, it actually won't fire the round until it thinks the round's going to hit the target that you've got it on. So so you do need to squeeze. So there has to be some sort of physical interaction. But when I was reading this the description of the presentation, they say it's not just that they can take over the firing mechanism, because that actually won't do them any good. If you're not squeezing the trigger, it's not going to fire the round. But they can reprogram the scope so that you actually aim at what it wants you to aim at in order to hit the target that it wants you to hit.
Yeah, so if it's preventing the trigger, is that hardware or software?
That's hardware.
Okay. I would want to see the mechanism on that before I'm comfortable with it.
I agree with Mark.
I'm calling shenanigans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, see, that's the thing. So it can't make you fire it, but it can change the alignment and the video coming from the scope to make you point at what you think you want to hit, but what it actually wants you to hit.
Right.
So that's the hack.
So it's seeing something different than you are.
Right.
You don't need to do any anticipation or ballistics or target acquisition. You just, unfortunately, the term would be point and shoot.
Yeah. This is pretty much how it works in Call of Duty, by the way. I've seen that, Advanced Warfare.
Yeah, Beer Me just mentioned that in oh no, somebody just mentioned that in the chat room.
That's COD.
Oh, Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike.
Oh, Counter-Strike?
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
goodness.
Thanks.
So Steve, okay, so these were the highlights. These were the ones that you saw. You said, okay,
well, I mean, I should say these are the ones that I pulled out for the podcast.
Right.
But it was an alphabetical listing, and it just goes on and on and on. You know, the browser scroll thumb shrunk down to minimum size because there is so much. And as I said at the beginning, my problem would be I really would love to actually see all of these. So I'm just going to stay away. Hold off the temptation and plow into them as soon as they're published.
Right. We do have a place. We have a pedestal and an audio tie-in for the keynotes. So we will be able to film the keynotes, but the policy of Black Hat is that you can only film the first 10 minutes of any breakout session. And DEF CON, I really try to do as little filming as possible just because it's not nice. Although I'm going to rant a little bit here. And Smitty, maybe you can help me. I have always been very respectful of DEF CON. I don't take wide shots. I don't take shots down hallways because you're supposed to ask every person if it's okay for them to be in the frame.
You have always been good about that.
The last 2 years, I've seen like ABC, BBC news crews setting up in big halls and just doing the big panning shot. I'm thinking, wait, what? What's going on here?
So I see above about the kind of the attendees of DEF CON having grown up. I think a lot fewer people care about it being known that they're going to DEF CON now. It's much less of a taboo than it used to be. So I think that's part of the problem. You have a lot fewer people who actually care. The people who do still care, they will go up to media and stop them. And I've been that person sometimes in the past. I don't know if we want to bring up the video now, but there's a wonderful video on YouTube about a particular media person getting called out by Dark Tangent in the middle of a talk, and because she refused to admit that she was press and that she was going in and trying to entrap hackers in the negative sense and trying to get them to admit to doing illegal things on camera or on like a surreptitiously hit. Yeah, it was a mess.
Wasn't that like 24 hours, or it was one of those tabloid shows?
Yeah, I don't remember the details, but you Google it and you'll find it. It's brilliant. And then the video of her getting chased out of DEF CON, I part of me feels sorry for her because I've had that like heart thumping terror of like adrenaline coursing through you, just trying to call someone like, oh my God, help me out of this. But at the same time, I'm like, you brought it on yourself, lady. Get out of here. You are not welcome. Also, because DT actually said, we'll register you as press right now. We'll give you the right badge, but we know you have a hidden camera in your bag, and we would really like for you to turn it off. 3 times DT tried to get her to come clean, and she wouldn't do it. And he's like, all right, I'm calling you out. And he did. It was brilliant. Well,
gentlemen, I'm sorry, but we've reached the end of the best dang enterprise podcast in the universe. That's according to 9 out of 10 gray hats. I do want to give everyone a chance to have one last go here, though. Either to say why we should be paying attention to the security news over the next week, why, if we have a chance, we should be going to the Hacker Summer Camp, or why we should stay tabbed for a future episode of Twilight. Let me start with you, Smitty. What would you like to say to the world out there?
So I've never been to B-Sides, and I need to fix that one of these years. B-Sides I've heard great things about. All the people who are who think Black Hat has gone too commercial, they go over to B-Sides, and that's kind of more of the kind of a polo shirt type of event. Black Hat is more of the button-down shirt type of event, and DEF CON is very much the T-shirt type of event.
Sometimes not even that.
Sometimes not even that. I would recommend that you take your choice of which of those that you want to go to and give it a shot. DEF CON is, yes, you can go see the talks after the event on YouTube, and I recommend doing that because they're great, and you don't have to worry about standing in line and all of the stinky, sweaty people who have been doing it all weekend. You know, it's so much better. But if you get a chance to go to DEF CON, go to the villages, go watch the contests, go observe people doing their stuff. When you're up on stage, there are people who have prepared presentations. Go to the villages. That's where it's actually happening. Come see me in the hardware hacking village. If you have a chance, come find me and shake my hand and say hi. If you get a chance, go to the DEF CON Darknet table in the contest area. It's an event that I started 3 years ago. I've kind of stepped away from it this year so that I can take my daughter to Roots Asylum. And go to the Lockpick Village, go to the Wireless Village. There's just so much going on that does not make it onto YouTube and doesn't really make it into the program. The program mentions the village and kind of what it's about, but you don't get a lot of detail as to what happens in the village. And that is really where the benefit is. As far as I'm concerned, you go in, you talk to the people, and they're not all the Black Hat hackers. In fact, very few of them are, but they are the people who are making stuff happen. They are the ones who are keeping your credit card numbers safe on all of your e-commerce sites. They're the ones who are, you know, making sure that all of your information, your passwords and everything are protected. And they're the ones who really are important. And going and talking to them and learning from them and teaching them what you know, all of that is so, so valuable. That's what I think you should do. And Steve, if you do make it up to DEF CON one of these years, you let me know. I will show you around and make sure that you get stuff out of it. You would have a good time. You got a deal,
Mark. You got a deal.
All right.
And I'll just add that I will certainly be covering this on Security Now, of course, and I'm sure that Father Robert will have me on his various podcasts wherever something has happened that needs some additional coverage. I'll be glad to pop in there too. So just keep an eye on the various podcasts.
Absolutely. And Curtis, I know you're not going to be there, but I think your group is going to be doing some coverage from Black Hat, yes?
Oh, absolutely. The dark reading folks will be there in force, and I would urge everyone to come over to darkreading.com. We've got some radio shows. I know I've already got several interviews in the can for those. There will be a post-Black Hat radio show where the editors talk about what they have seen that impressed them most. So check out darkreading.com and the radio programs we're going to be doing from Black Hat.
Fantastic.
Padre, I want to mention Cool Breeze in the IRC chat room found the YouTube link. It's NBC Dateline Reporter flees DEF CON 15. That's the video you want to go Google and find, and it is brilliant. It's absolutely wonderful to watch.
It really is. You feel bad, but at the same time, yeah.
You do feel a little bad, but yeah, no, you brought it on yourself.
It's plug time, gentlemen. Of course, I want to start with Steve because Steve Gibson, we don't talk enough about SpinRite. And we do have a SpinRite special that will be on Know-How. It's already been filmed. We just have to release it, where we made ourselves a nice little inexpensive box to drop hard drives and SSDs into, and it will do its own SpinRite thing so that you can go back to work with your main station. But, of course, grc.com, it's the place to go. You find not just SpinRite, not just Shields Up, but you also find updates about Squirrel, We got to have you on Twite again to talk a bit about Squirrel, because it's amazing technology.
Love to do that, and it'll be happening as soon as I can make it. We're getting close.
Getting close. So Steve Gibson, grc.com. Also, you can follow him on Twitter at is it SGGRC?
Yep.
At SGGRC. Steve Gibson. You'll find him every Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Pacific time for Security Now with Leo Laporte. Smitty, I know you don't have anything to plug right now. I know that you want people to say hi to you at DEF CON, but I'm going to have you on Coding 101 and Know-How. We're going to do another crossover episode. We did one a few months back.
Yeah.
You want to tease?
That was a lot of fun.
That was fun. That was very much fun. Do you want to tease that at all?
Sure. Well, first, I do have something I want to plug. I want to plug the DEF CON Darknet. It's not something that you have to be at the event to do. In fact, we've got a teaser site up right now. So you'll notice in my lower third, right around other side, over here, dcdark.net. Go check it out. And if you're going to be at DEF CON, go play that. It's a lot of fun. Thank you to Daniel Suarez for giving me the inspiration to do that. So that's awesome. The plugging of what we're going to be doing. So I am a ham radio operator as well. Nice to meet you, Curtis, 73s. The next project I want to do is to make an automatic tee for a tee hunt, for a fox hunt. So a little tiny microcontroller that will key up a cheap HT radio that you can use for running transmitter hunts.
Maybe I shouldn't have let you plug that, because now the Ham Nation people are going to be upset with me for stealing some of their thunder.
Well, you know what? There's no reason we can't do a three-way crossover.
We'll do a three-way crossover.
Post some of it too.
Oh man, people's minds are going to explode. Speaking of exploding minds, Curtis Franklin, of course, Information Week Radio. You're going to be covering some of the events out of Black Hat DEF CON. Is there any place else that you'd like to push people to find your work?
Well, in addition to all the radio stuff, I am writing several times a week at informationweek.com, including my series of Information Week Elite 100 Award winners. I'm doing deep profiles on these, great stories of IT professionals and the projects that brought them notice. If you want to learn from your peers, this is a great way to do it. Check it out at informationweek.com.
Gentlemen, thank you so very much for being part of this episode. And also thanks to you. That's right, our loyal audience, the people who download, who watch every single week. We wouldn't have a show without you. We want to make it easier for you to get This Week in Enterprise Tech on your device of choice. Just go to our show page at twit.tv/Twiet. That's T-W-I-E-T, This Week in Enterprise Tech. And you'll be able to download all of our back episodes, see our show notes, so if you want to see the links for these stories that we talk about, as well as subscribe so you can get the feed, the audio, the video, the high-definition video version, into your device of choice. Also, don't forget that we do the show live most weeks, not this week because, of course, we're at Black Hat DEF CON. But if you just go to live.twit.tv at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, you'll find the pre-show, the post-show, and everything in between. You get to see how the sausage is made. As long as you're watching live, go ahead and jump into the chat room at irc.twit.tv. There you'll be able to speak to me during the show. I've got a little window right down there so I can see what you're saying. You can ask me questions, ask the guest questions. It's a nice way to interact. It's more than just TV. It's Twit TV. Finally, I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, to Lisa and to Leo, and of course to Karsten, my super producer, and to my special TD today. I don't know if he's got a camera on himself, but it's Mr. Alex Gumpel. He's also my TD for Know-How. He's a great guy. He's a mainstay here at the Twit TV Brick House.
That's a lie.
He's gonna, yes, he does that. He's got the self-deprecating humor. But folks, please follow him. Twitter.com/ANELF3 NL3. No, see,
I don't endorse it.
He does endorse it, folks. Follow him. He's Alex. He's perfect. He's Twit. Until next time, I'm Father Robert Balaser. This has been This Week in Enterprise Tech. And remember, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep Twit.